David Reed knelt in the mud, studying the massive paw print before him. The wolf track was fresh, maybe an hour old. Around him, the Montana wilderness stretched endlessly under gray clouds. This was his 14th day tracking the problem wolf, the one ranchers wanted dead. But David had other plans. His radio crackled. "David, you there?" "Yes, Sally, what's up?" "You need to come back to base now. Something weird happened." David frowned. Sally never sounded nervous. "How weird?" "Aliens contacted you weird." 20 minutes later, David stood in the small research station, staring at a holographic projection floating above his desk. The image showed a creature that looked like a praying mantis crossed with a beetle, standing upright. Its voice came through a translator device, sounding surprisingly calm. "Mr. Reed, I am Commander Rilth of the Drylin Coalition. We have been studying your work with dangerous predators on Earth. Your methods are unusual but effective." David crossed his arms. "Thanks, I guess. Why are you calling me?" "We have a situation on our frontier colony. A creature we call the Night Maw has been attacking our settlements. Dozens of our people have died. Our weapons cannot stop it. We need someone who understands predators. You want me to kill it. We want you to solve the problem. We have observed that humans have a unique relationship with their planet's predators. You have turned enemies into companions. Perhaps you can help us where we have failed." David walked to the window, watching rain fall on the forest. "I don't kill animals just because they're inconvenient. There's always a reason they attack. Find the reason, fix the problem. That is exactly why we chose you. Will you come?" 3 days later, David found himself aboard a Drylin transport ship leaving Earth behind. The journey took 2 weeks through something the aliens called jump space, which made his stomach feel like it was turning inside out. The Drylin crew kept their distance, watching him with their large, compound eyes. They seemed fascinated by everything he did. Dr. Fenn, the xenobiologist assigned to brief him, was less intimidating than the others. She had green markings on her carapace and moved with careful precision. "The Night Maw is unlike anything in our records," she explained, showing him footage on a screen. "It is 6-legged, roughly the size of your Earth elephants, with scales that change color to match surroundings. It has demonstrated tactical intelligence in its attacks." David watched the grainy video. The creature moved through a settlement at night, avoiding lights and sensors. "When did the attack start?" "Approximately 3 years ago. They have become more frequent and more focused." "Focused how?" Dr. Fenn hesitated. "The creature seems to target specific facilities. Industrial sites mostly. Not homes? Not population centers?" "Sometimes, but primarily industrial targets." David leaned back. "That's not random predator behavior. That's something else." When they finally arrived at the Drylin homeworld, David pressed his face against the viewing port. The planet was beautiful. Crystalline forest covered much of the surface, glowing with bioluminescent light. The shimmer wastes where the Night Maw lived sparkled like a desert of broken glass. The landing was rough. David grabbed his equipment bag and followed Commander Rilth down the ramp. The gravity was slightly lighter than Earth, making each step feel bouncy. The air smelled like ozone and something sweet he couldn't identify. "Welcome to Haven Colony," Rilth said. "Your accommodations are prepared. Tomorrow we begin the hunt." That night David couldn't sleep. He reviewed all the data Dr. Fenn had given him. Something didn't add up. The attack patterns were too specific. Predators didn't work like this. They attacked easy targets, weak prey opportunities. This creature was making choices. He pulled up a map of the attacks, overlaying them with industrial sites. Every single attack matched. Not one random civilian target, not one school or hospital. Only industrial facilities, and specifically ones in the Shimmer Wastes region. "What are you protecting?" David whispered to himself, staring at the map. The next morning, Commander Rilth assembled a team of heavily armed soldiers. They carried energy weapons that hummed with power. David looked at them and shook his head. "I'm not taking those. The Night Maw has armor like scales. You need proper weapons. I need tranquilizers, tracking equipment, and climbing gear. That's it." Rilth's antennae twitched in what David had learned was irritation. "You cannot seriously believe you can approach this creature unarmed." "I've walked with grizzly bears, Commander. I've sat 10 feet from wild wolves. The trick isn't the weapon. It's the understanding." David shouldered his pack. "You can send a security team if it makes you feel better, but they stay back." Way back. The journey into the Shimmer Wastes took 6 hours by ground vehicle. The crystalline formations grew larger and more beautiful the deeper they went. David saw native wildlife, strange six-legged creatures that scattered at their approach. Birds with translucent wings filled the air. They made camp at the edge of a canyon system. Dr. Fenn had tracked the night maw to this area using satellite imagery. David studied the canyon walls as the sun set. Yes, plural, this planet had two. The shadows grew long and strange. "I'll start at dawn," David announced. "Alone." "That is unacceptable," Rilth said. "Then I pack up and go home. I don't work with an audience." David met the commander's compound eyes. "You brought me here because I know predators. Let me do my job." Rilth clicked her mandibles in frustration but nodded. That night, David lay in his tent listening to the sounds of an alien wilderness. Somewhere out there, a creature everyone called a monster was hunting. But David had learned long ago that monsters were usually just misunderstood. Tomorrow he would find out what the night maw really was. And maybe, just maybe, why it was so angry. Dawn broke over the shimmer wastes with colors David had never seen before. Purple mixed with orange, casting strange shadows across the crystalline landscape. He checked his equipment one final time. Tranquilizer gun, tracking scanner, water, climbing rope, and his most important tool, patience. The canyon system was massive, filled with caves and crevices. David moved slowly, reading the environment like a book. Scratch marks on crystal formations, disturbed sand patterns, a faint smell like burned metal. The night maw had been here recently. His earpiece crackled. "David, report your position," Commander Rilth demanded. "About 2 miles into the canyon. Found fresh tracks, be careful. We lost 3 soldiers in this area last month." David didn't respond. He switched off the communicator. Constant chatter would only distract him. More importantly, it might scare away what he was looking for. The tracks led deeper into the canyon. David noticed something interesting. The creature's gait pattern showed a limp on the rear left side. Old injury, probably. He also found marks where the night maw had stopped to rest several times. Whatever this creature was, it wasn't at full strength. 3 hours of tracking brought him to a wider section of canyon where the walls opened into a natural amphitheater. The crystal formations here were enormous, some taller than buildings. David felt exposed but continued forward. That's when he saw it. The night maw stood on a ridge above him, perfectly still. It was larger than the videos suggested, easily 12 feet tall at the shoulder. 6 legs supported a muscular body covered in scales that shifted colors, currently matching the purple-gray of the surrounding crystals. Its head was elongated with powerful jaws and eyes that caught the sunlight like mirrors. David froze. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but he knew that would trigger a chase response. Instead, he slowly lowered himself into a crouch, making himself smaller, less threatening. He kept his eyes down, avoiding direct eye contact. The night maw watched him. Seconds stretched into minutes. David could hear his own heartbeat. The creature's scales shifted through different colors, a display he didn't understand. Then it made a sound, a deep rumbling that vibrated through the canyon floor. David remained still. The night maw took one step forward, then another. It was testing him, trying to understand what he was. David noticed the limp he'd tracked earlier. He also saw something else. Burn scars along the creature's left flank and what looked like old wounds from industrial cutting tools. The creature came closer. David could smell it now. A strange mixture of musk and something chemical. 20 feet away. 15. The massive head lowered, nostrils flaring as it scented him. David kept breathing slowly, steadily, projecting calm. Then the night maw did something unexpected. It circled him once, studying him from all angles, and walked away. It didn't attack. It didn't even threaten. It simply left, disappearing into the maze of crystal formations. David let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. His hands were shaking. He activated his communicator. "Rilth, I made contact. Are you injured? Do you need extraction?" "No, I'm fine. The night maw was here. It could have killed me easily." David stood up, looking at the direction the creature had gone. But it didn't. It just looked at me and left. That makes no sense. The night maw always attacks. Maybe it only attacks Draylen. Or maybe it only attacks when threatened. David began following the new tracks. "I'm continuing pursuit." "David, do not engage again without backup." "I'm not engaging. I'm observing." The trail led him through narrower passages where the crystal walls pressed close. David found more evidence of the night maw's intelligence. In one cave, he discovered a cache of what looked like medicinal plants, carefully arranged. The creature was treating its own injuries. In another location, he found marks on the walls, deliberate scratches that formed patterns. Not random damage, something more like communication or record-keeping. David photographed everything. As the day wore on, he found himself in deeper, older parts of the canyon system. The crystals here were darker, almost black. Then he stumbled onto something that changed everything. Hidden behind a collapsed section of canyon wall was a Terran industrial facility. Or what was left of one. The equipment was old, rusted, abandoned, but the waste barrels were still there, leaking toxic chemicals into the ground. Warning symbols in Terran script covered the barrels. David explored the site, his anger growing. This was an illegal dump. Someone had been disposing of industrial waste in the shimmer wastes, poisoning the environment. He checked his scanner. Radiation levels were elevated. Chemical contamination was severe. He found more sites over the next few hours. All hidden, all illegal, all in areas the Nightmaw had attacked. Son of a... David stopped himself. He understood now. The Nightmaw wasn't attacking randomly. It was attacking the sources of pollution, the facilities that had poisoned its home. His communicator buzzed. Dr. Fenn's voice came through quiet and urgent. David, you need to see something. I'm sending you coordinates. Come alone. The coordinates led him to a small cave away from the main canyon. Dr. Fenn was waiting, her carapace displaying nervous color patterns. I could lose my position for showing you this, she said, but I cannot stay silent anymore. She pulled up files on a portable device, documents, reports, evidence of systematic environmental destruction. Corporate interests from the Terran core worlds had been using the shimmer wastes as an illegal dumping ground for decades. The Nightmaw species used to be common, Dr. Fenn explained. But they died off, poisoning, habitat destruction. Now there might be only one left. And it's been fighting back, David said, attacking the facilities that destroyed its home. Yes, but the corporations have political power. They convinced the government that the Nightmaw is a mindless monster. It was easier than admitting their crimes. David looked at the evidence, his mind racing. How high does this go? Very high. Commander Rilth doesn't know. She genuinely believes we're hunting a dangerous predator. But others know the truth. A sound echoed through the canyon, a roar that shook the crystal formations. David and Dr. Fenn looked at each other. That's the Nightmaw, Dr. Fenn said. Something's wrong. David ran toward the sound, ignoring Dr. Fenn's calls to wait. He emerged onto a ridge overlooking a valley. Below, the Nightmaw was surrounded by Terran soldiers. They had tracking nets and energy weapons. The creature was cornered, fighting desperately. Stop! David shouted into his communicator. Stand down. Negative, came an unfamiliar voice. This is corporate security. The Nightmaw dies today. David watched helplessly as the soldiers closed in. The Nightmaw fought with savage intelligence, but there were too many. Then, just before the killing blow could land, the creature looked up. Its eyes met David's across the distance. In that moment, David saw something he recognized. Not a monster, not a mindless beast, but a thinking being, alone and desperate, fighting for its survival. The Nightmaw broke through the line of soldiers, scattering them, and fled deeper into the canyon. The security team pursued. David made a decision. He wasn't here to hunt this creature. He was here to save it. David spent the next 3 days doing something that would have seemed crazy to anyone watching. He was leaving food for a creature everyone else wanted dead. The first offering was simple. A large piece of protein ration from his supplies, placed on a flat rock near where he'd last seen the Nightmaw. He retreated 200 yards and waited. 4 hours later, the food was gone. The second day, he left the food closer to a cave he suspected was the creature's den. This time, he added some of the medicinal plants he'd seen in the Nightmaw's cache, except fresh ones he'd found growing in a less contaminated area. Again, he waited at a distance. The Nightmaw appeared briefly, a shadow in the fading light. It took the offering and vanished. The third day, David sat 50 yards from the food. He made himself visible, but kept his body language relaxed. He pretended to be interested in his scanner, not watching directly. From the corner of his eye, he saw the Nightmaw approach. It stopped studying him. David continued his charade of indifference. After several minutes, the creature took the food. Commander Rilth was growing impatient. 3 days, Mr. Reed, and you have made no progress in eliminating the threat. I've made plenty of progress, just not the kind you expected. Corporate security is demanding action. There was another incident yesterday, a mining facility in Sector 7. A legitimate facility or another illegal dump? Silence on the other end. Then, "I do not understand your question." David explained what he'd found. The illegal dumping. The evidence Dr. Fenn had shown him. The pattern of attacks. When he finished, Rilth was quiet for a long moment. "These are serious accusations," she finally said. "They're facts. Check it yourself. I will investigate." "But David, if what you say is true, this situation is more complex than I was led to believe. You must be careful. There are powerful interests involved." On the fourth day, David brought something different. He'd found the remains of one of the nightmaw's prey species, a six-legged herbivore. He quartered it and left it near the den entrance. Then he sat down 30 yards away and started sketching in his notebook. Just a man drawing the landscape, not a threat. The nightmaw emerged before noon. It was the longest David had seen it in daylight. The creature approached the meat but kept watching him. David continued sketching. The nightmaw ate, then did something remarkable. It pushed 1/4 of the meat back toward David. David looked up, meeting the creature's eyes. "An offering for an offering. A recognition of exchange, thank you," David said softly. "But I brought it for you." The nightmaw's scales rippled with color changes. David had been studying these patterns. He believed they were a form of communication. This particular pattern seemed like curiosity. Over the next few days, the distance between them shrank. 40 yards, 30, 20. David learned the nightmaw's body language. When it was relaxed, its scales showed softer colors. When it was alert, they became sharper, more contrasted. When it was in pain, they dulled. David noticed the creature was still limping. The old injuries weren't healing properly. One evening, he left medical supplies along with the food. Bandages, antiseptic, pain medication from his own kit. The next morning, they were gone. Dr. Fenn visited him in secret. "Commander Rilth is investigating your claims. She found evidence of the illegal dumping. There's going to be an inquiry. Will it be enough to stop the hunt? I don't know. The corporate interests are fighting back. They're claiming you've been compromised, that you're siding with a dangerous predator. I'm siding with the truth. Truth doesn't always win, David. Not when money and power are involved." That night, David couldn't sleep. He sat outside his tent watching the stars. 2 moons hung in the sky, casting double shadows. The shimmer wastes looked otherworldly in the moonlight. A sound made him turn. The nightmaw stood at the edge of his camp, closer than it had ever been, maybe 15 feet away. David slowly stood up, keeping his movements calm. They looked at each other. David could see the intelligence in those mirror-like eyes. This wasn't an animal. This was a person, just wearing a very different shape. "I'm sorry," David said. "I'm sorry for what they did to your home. To your people." The nightmaw tilted its head. Then it turned and walked away, but slowly, almost like an invitation. David made a snap decision. He grabbed his pack and followed. The creature led him deep into the canyon system to places he hadn't explored. They walked for over an hour. Finally, they arrived at a hidden cave entrance. The nightmaw paused at the entrance, looking back at David. Then it went inside. David followed, using his flashlight. The cave was large with high ceilings, and there, in a carefully prepared nest, were 3 eggs. Each one was the size of a basketball, covered in the same color-changing scales as the adult. Understanding crashed over David. The nightmaw wasn't just fighting for its home. It was fighting for its children, the last children of its species. "You're a mother," David whispered. The nightmaw, Blue he decided to call her, seeing the bioluminescent patterns glowing on her scales, positioned herself between David and the eggs. But she wasn't threatening. She was showing him, trusting him with the truth. David sat down slowly. "I understand. I'll protect them. I promise." Blue made a sound softer than her usual roars, almost like a purr. She moved to the side, allowing David to see the eggs better. He noticed she had been keeping them warm, rotating them regularly. Good parenting instincts, they stayed there for hours. David examined the cave while Blue watched. He found more evidence of her intelligence. She had created simple tools, rocks shaped for specific purposes. She had drawings on the cave walls depicting her species in better times. Groups of nightmaws living together in the shimmer waste before the corporations came. "You're not alone anymore," David said. "I'm here now. We'll figure this out." As dawn approached, David left the cave. Blue followed him partway, then returned to guard her eggs. David hiked back to his camp, his mind full of plans. When he arrived, Commander Rilth was waiting with Dr. Fenn and a security team. We need to talk, Rilth said. I found the illegal dumps. I also found orders from corporate leadership to eliminate the Nightmaw by any means necessary. This has become a political situation. It's more than political, David said. It's about survival. The Nightmaw, I call her Blue, she has eggs. 3 of them. She's protecting the last generation of her species. Rilth's antennae drooped. This complicates matters significantly. No, David said firmly. This simplifies them. Blue isn't a monster. She's a mother defending her children from the people who murdered her entire species. If we have any decency, any honor, we stop hunting her and start protecting her. Corporate security has been given authorization to use orbital strikes, Dr. Fenn said quietly. They're going to sterilize the entire canyon system in 48 hours. David felt cold fury building in his chest. Over my dead body. That can be arranged, said a new voice. A Dralin in corporate insignia stepped forward, flanked by armed guards. David Reed, you are interfering with a legal security operation. Stand down or be removed. The corporate representative was named Director Voss. His carapace was dark blue, almost black, and covered in expensive decorative etchings. He moved with the confidence of someone who had never been told no. You have 24 hours to leave this planet, Mr. Reed, Voss said. After that, anyone in the strike zone will be considered hostile. David stood his ground. You can't do this. That creature is intelligent. She has children. You'd be committing genocide. We are protecting our citizens from a dangerous predator. Nothing more. Voss turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Commander Rilth, you are relieved of duty pending an investigation into your competence. Dr. Fenn, you are terminated effective immediately. After they left, the 3 of them stood in silence. Finally, Rilth spoke. I am sorry, David. I brought you here believing we were doing the right thing. You were doing what you thought was right with the information you had, David said. That's all anyone can do. What will you do now? Dr. Fenn asked. David looked toward the canyon. I'm not leaving. If they want to orbital strike that canyon, they'll have to kill me too. That is suicide, Rilth said. Maybe, but I made a promise. David started gathering his gear. Blue trusted me. I won't betray that trust. Then I am coming with you, Rilth said. I may be relieved of duty, but I am not relieved of my conscience. As am I, Dr. Fenn added. I have been silent too long about the corporation's crimes. David smiled. Thank you. Both of you. Now let's move. We have a lot to do. They spent the rest of the day relocating to the cave where Blue kept her eggs. David worried about how she would react to the others, but Blue surprised him. After a tense standoff, she allowed Rilth and Dr. Fenn to enter. Perhaps she understood they were allies. Dr. Fenn examined the eggs with scientific fascination. These are incredible. The shells contain adaptive technology. They can regulate temperature and even camouflage like the adult. How long until they hatch? David asked. Based on similar species biology, perhaps 2 weeks, maybe less. We don't have 2 weeks, Rilth noted. We have less than 24 hours. David pulled out his communicator. Then we go public. Earth needs to know what's happening here. He recorded everything. Blue and her eggs. The evidence of illegal dumping. The corporate conspiracy. The planned orbital strike. He sent it all to Earth, to news agencies, to the government, to anyone who would listen. Then they waited. Blue seemed to understand something was wrong. She became more agitated, pacing the cave. David tried to calm her, but she sensed the danger. Finally, as night fell, Blue did something unexpected. She gently nudged one of the eggs toward David. What is she doing? Dr. Fenn asked. David understood. She's asking me to protect them. If something happens to her, she wants me to save her children. He knelt beside the egg. It was warm to the touch, pulsing slightly with life. I will. I promise. Blue made a sound, then touched David's face gently with her massive head. It was the first time she'd made direct physical contact. David reached up and touched her scales. They were warm, almost hot, and vibrated with energy. I won't let them hurt you, David said. Any of you. The night passed slowly. They took turns keeping watch while Blue curled around her eggs. David noticed she barely slept, always alert, always protective. He saw himself in her, the same stubborn determination to protect what mattered. At dawn, the communications started. Earth had received his message. It was spreading across human networks like wildfire. News agencies were picking it up. Politicians were demanding answers. The phrase humanity's newest friend was trending. Then the Draylen networks got hold of it. Public opinion shifted rapidly. The images of Blue with her eggs combined with evidence of corporate crimes created outrage. Protests started outside corporate headquarters. Director Voss called David's communicator. "You have made a serious mistake, Mr. Reed." "No, Director. You made the mistake when you decided profit was worth more than life. The strike is still authorized. You have 6 hours. Then you'll have to explain to the galaxy why you murdered a mother and her children on camera. Because I'm broadcasting live." David activated his suit camera and began streaming. Millions of viewers across multiple species watched as he showed Blue, her eggs, and explained the situation. The viewership numbers climbed rapidly. 3 hours later, ships began arriving. Not military ships, civilian vessels. Draylen citizens who had seen the broadcast and came to help. They formed a blockade around the canyon, their ships creating a protective barrier. Then Earth ships arrived. Human diplomatic vessels, military observers, and even private citizens who had somehow gotten there. They joined the blockade. Director Voss tried to order the strike anyway, but the military commander refused. "Sir, if I fire on this position, I will be killing civilians from multiple species, including humans. I cannot follow that order." The standoff continued for another day. Blue remained in the cave with her eggs, while David, Rilth, and Dr. Fenn coordinated with the support fleet above. More evidence of corporate corruption came to light. Other illegal activities, other covered-up crimes. On the second night, something amazing happened. One of the eggs began to crack. "David," Dr. Fenn called. "It's hatching." They gathered around as the shell split open. A tiny nightmaw emerged, scales shifting through rainbow colors. It was no bigger than a large dog with oversized eyes and unsteady legs. Blue immediately began cleaning her baby, making soft sounds David had never heard before. The newborn responded with tiny chirps. Within minutes, it was attempting to walk. David recorded everything, still streaming. The galaxy watched as new life entered the world. The second egg hatched an hour later than the third. 3 healthy babies, each with unique scale patterns. Blue was gentle with them, guiding them, teaching them. The babies quickly discovered David and approached curiously. "They don't fear you," Rilth observed. "Their mother doesn't fear me," David said. "So they learn that I'm safe." One of the babies, the smallest one, climbed onto David's lap. It was surprisingly heavy and warm. It looked up at him with those mirror-like eyes and made a questioning sound. "Hello there," David said softly. "Welcome to the universe. I'm sorry it's been such a mess, but we're going to make it better. I promise." The baby curled up and fell asleep on him. Blue watched, and David could have sworn she looked satisfied. Above them, the political situation was resolving. The evidence was overwhelming. Corporate leadership was being arrested. Director Voss was removed from power. The Draylen government issued a formal apology and declared the end. Shimmer Wastes a protected sanctuary. Commander Rilth was reinstated with a promotion. Dr. Fenn was offered a position as the sanctuary's chief scientist, and David was granted legal guardianship of Blue and her children, the first human to be given such an honor by an alien species. As dawn broke on the third day, David sat at the cave entrance with Blue beside him and her 3 babies playing nearby. The Shimmer Waste sparkled in the morning light, beautiful and peaceful. "We did it," he said to Blue. "Your children are safe." Blue rumbled softly, a sound he now recognized as contentment. She rested her head near him, watching her babies explore their world. David thought about how this all started, with everyone seeing a monster. Now they saw a family. Sometimes, he thought, changing perspective was the hardest and most important work of all. 2 weeks after the babies hatched, David stood before the Draylen Council chamber preparing to testify. The building was enormous, built from the same crystalline material as the Shimmer Wastes. Light refracted through it in dazzling patterns. "Are you ready?" Rilth asked. She wore her formal military uniform, decorated with new honors. "As ready as I'll be," David said. He carried a datapad with all his evidence, though most of it had already been leaked to the public. The hearing was being broadcast across the Draylen worlds and beyond. David entered the chamber to find it packed with spectators, journalists, and government officials. At the front sat a panel of judges, their carapaces painted with symbols of authority. The lead judge spoke. "David Reed of Earth, you are here to provide testimony regarding the Nightmaw incident and corporate malfeasance in the Shimmer Wastes. Please begin. David took a breath and started talking. He explained everything from the beginning. His arrival, the tracking, finding the illegal dumps, discovering Blue and her eggs. He showed video evidence, chemical analysis, corporate documents that Dr. Fenn had secured. The corporations didn't want the Nightmaw dead because it was dangerous, David said. They wanted it dead because it was evidence. Every attack targeted facilities involved in illegal dumping. Blue wasn't a monster. She was a witness. The defense attorney representing the corporation stood. Mr. Reed, you are not a trained xenobiologist. How can you claim to understand this creature's motivations? Because I've spent my life understanding creatures everyone else called monsters. And because Blue told me, the creature cannot speak. Not in words. But communication is more than words. David pulled up video of Blue showing him the eggs, protecting him from danger, sharing food. Intelligence and intent are clear in her actions. She thinks, she plans, she cares for her children. That's not an animal. That's a person. The hearing continued for hours. Dr. Fenn testified about the ecological damage. Rilth testified about the orders she'd received and the information she'd been denied. Other witnesses came forward, including Draylen workers who had been silenced when they tried to report the dumping. Director Voss took the stand, denying everything. These are lies spread by a human who has no understanding of our world. The Nightmaw is dangerous. It has killed our people. Only when they invaded its territory with illegal operations, David shot back. Show me one instance of Blue attacking a legitimate settlement that wasn't near a contamination site. Just one. Voss couldn't. The trial lasted 3 days. During recesses, David returned to the sanctuary they'd established in the Shimmer Wastes. Blue and her babies were thriving. The juveniles were growing fast, already twice their birth size. They had distinct personalities. The smallest, who David called Scout, was curious and brave. The middle child, Shade, was cautious and thoughtful. The largest, Hunter, was playful and energetic. They treated David like part of the family. When he arrived, they would rush to greet him, scales flashing with excited colors. Blue would rumble in greeting, then go back to teaching them how to hunt the small creatures that lived in the canyon. They're learning fast, Dr. Fenn observed. She had set up a research station near the cave. Their intelligence is remarkable. I've documented tool use, problem solving, even what appears to be language between them and their mother. Have you figured out the color patterns? David asked, partially. It's complex. Not just communication, but also emotion, camouflage, and social bonding. Each individual has unique patterns like fingerprints. On the 4th day of the trial, something happened that changed everything. A Draylen scientist named Dr. Kryn, who had worked for the corporations, came forward with new evidence. I was part of the team that studied the Nightmaw species 30 years ago, he testified. We documented a population of over 200 individuals. They were intelligent, peaceful, and had a rich social structure. The corporations knew this. They destroyed them anyway because the Nightmaw's territory contained valuable mineral deposits. He presented files, videos, research papers. All of it had been buried, classified, hidden. The gallery erupted in shock and anger. They committed genocide, Dr. Kryn continued, his voice shaking. They murdered an intelligent species and called it pest control. Blue is the only survivor we know of. These 3 babies might be the last of their kind in the entire universe. The judge called for order. Director Voss, how do you respond to these allegations? Voss remained silent. That night, David sat with Blue under the double moons. The babies were asleep in the cave. Blue had been quieter than usual, as if she sensed the importance of what was happening. Did you know? David asked her. Did you know you were the last? Blue made a low sound, mournful and deep. She touched her head to David's shoulder. He put his arm around her neck, feeling the warmth of her scales. You're not alone anymore, he said. Your children will grow up safe. I promise you that. The next day, the verdict came. The corporate executives were found guilty on all charges. The illegal operations were shut down. Massive fines were imposed. Criminal sentences were handed down. Director Voss received 20 years in prison. But more importantly, the judge made a historic declaration. The evidence clearly shows that the Nightmaw species, officially renamed as Blue's request as Shimmerlings, possess intelligence equal to any sentient species. They are hereby granted full protections under galactic law. The Shimmer Wastes are declared a permanent sanctuary. Any future harm to Shimmerlings or their habitat will be treated as murder. The gallery erupted in applause. David felt tears on his face. He looked at Rilth and Dr. Fenn, who were both celebrating. But the judge wasn't finished. Furthermore, this council recognizes that without the intervention of David Reed and his uniquely human perspective, this genocide would have been completed. We formally acknowledge humanity's philosophy of coexistence with other species as a model worth studying. Earth will be invited to participate in forming new environmental protection standards. When David returned to the sanctuary, Blue seemed to know. She greeted him with a sound like singing, her scales rippling with joyous colors. The babies responded, creating a chorus of chirps and calls. "You're protected now," David told them. "All of you. This is your home and no one can take it from you." Scout climbed onto David's shoulders, a position she'd claimed as her favorite spot. Shade and Hunter wrestled nearby while Blue watched with what David was certain was maternal pride. Dr. Fenn approached with news. "David, we've been getting reports. Other night moth sightings in remote areas. Blue might not be the only survivor after all." David felt hope surge through him. "How many? We don't know yet, but we're organizing expeditions, peaceful ones. If there are others, we'll find them and protect them." That evening, David sat at the cave entrance with his strange new family. Blue lay beside him, her massive form a comforting presence, the three babies curled up around them, safe and content. Above, the stars shone in alien configurations, and David thought about how far he'd come. He'd been invited to hunt a monster. Instead, he'd found a mother protecting her children. He'd exposed a conspiracy, sparked a revolution in how aliens viewed intelligence, and became part of a family that transcended species. Not bad for a wildlife conservationist from Montana, he said to himself. Blue rumbled in agreement. 6 months had passed since the trial. The Shimmer Waste Sanctuary had transformed from a desolate canyon system into a thriving research and conservation center. David stood on the newly built observation deck, watching the sunrise paint the crystalline formations in shades of gold and purple. Below, Blue was teaching her children to hunt. They were enormous now, nearly 2/3 her size. Scout had become an expert tracker. Shade could disappear completely using her camouflage abilities. Hunter had developed incredible speed and agility. They worked together as a team, bringing down a large herbivore in a coordinated attack. "Beautiful, aren't they?" Dr. Fenn said, joining him with 2 cups of coffee. A human habit she'd adopted. "Amazing. Sometimes I forget how dangerous they could be. But they're not. Not to us, that's the remarkable thing." Dr. Fenn pulled up a data pad. "The psychological research is fascinating. The babies were born with you present. They've bonded with humans as part of their family unit. They literally don't understand that they should fear us." "How's the search for other shimmerlings going?" "We've confirmed 4 more adults and found evidence of at least 3 nests. Blue's species might recover after all." David smiled. "That's the best news I've heard all week." The sanctuary had become famous across the galaxy. Thousands of visitors came every month, watching from designated areas as Blue and her family lived their lives. It had sparked a conservation movement. Other species began reassessing their relationships with their planet's predators. The term that had spread through alien networks was uniquely human. "Pulling a David Reed." It meant refusing to kill what others feared, choosing understanding over violence. It had become something between a compliment and a gentle mockery. Commander Rilth arrived, now General Rilth, after her promotion. "David, we have a situation." "What kind of situation?" "The diplomatic kind. There's a delegation from the Venn Collective. They have a predator problem on their colony world. Specifically, they're asking for you." David raised an eyebrow. "Me specifically?" "They said, and I quote, 'We need someone who adopts apex predators.' Their government tried conventional solutions. All failed. They're hoping you can work your human magic." David looked back at Blue and her children. "I can't just leave them. We anticipated that." Rilth gestured to the landing pad where a massive ship was descending. "That's a diplomatic vessel with custom accommodations. They're offering to bring your family with you." "My family?" "Their words, not mine. Though I think they're accurate." Dr. Fenn laughed. "The galaxy has realized something important about humans. You don't travel alone. You bring your pack." David considered it. The Venn Collective was on the other side of known space. It would be a long journey, but it was also an opportunity to help another species, maybe save another creature everyone else had given up on. "Let me talk to Blue." He climbed down to the canyon floor. Blue saw him coming and made a questioning sound. The babies bounded over as they always did, scales flashing with excited colors. Scout immediately climbed onto his shoulders, her favorite position even though she was now too big for it. "Hey girl," David said, adjusting to her weight. "So I've got a proposal. How would you all like to go on an adventure?" He explained the situation as best he could. Blue listened, her scales shifting through thoughtful patterns. When he finished, she looked at her children, then back at David. She made a sound he'd learned meant agreement. "You sure? It's a long trip. New places, new people." Blue touched his face gently with her massive head. It was a gesture that meant trust. Wherever he went, she would follow. The preparations took a week. The Ven diplomats were nervous when Blue and her children boarded their ship, but David assured them it would be fine. The ship's cargo bay was converted into a comfortable habitat. They even installed crystalline formations from the sanctuary, so Blue's family would feel at home. The journey took 3 weeks through jump space. David used the time to research the Ven's predator problem. The creature was called a stormwalker, a massive 6-armed predator that lived in their planet's storm systems. It had been attacking settlements and the Ven couldn't understand why. "Sound familiar?" Rilth asked. She had come along as military liaison. "Very familiar. I'm betting there's more to this story." When they arrived at the Ven colony world, they were greeted by Premier Tan, a tall, slender being with blue skin and 4 arms. Her species communicated through a combination of sounds and gesture. "David Reed, thank you for coming. We are desperate. The Stormwalker killed 6 of our people last month. Tell me about your colony. What industries do you have here?" "We harvest atmospheric gases. Very profitable." "Why do you ask?" "Just curious. I'd like to see the attack sites. The investigation took 2 days." David, accompanied by Blue, explored the areas where the Stormwalker had struck. Every single location was near a gas harvesting facility. The pattern was identical to the shimmer waste situation. He also found something else. Evidence that the harvesting operations were disrupting the planet's storm systems, the Stormwalker's natural habitat. "You're destroying its home," David told Premier Tan. "It's not attacking randomly. It's defending its territory. But we need those gases for our economy. Then harvest them responsibly. There are ways to do it without disrupting the ecosystem. Or you can keep fighting a war you'll never win." With the Ven government's reluctant approval, David went into the storm zones to find the Stormwalker. Blue and her children came with him, wearing special protective gear Dr. Fenn had designed. The Stormwalker was magnificent, a creature of lightning and wind. When it first saw them, it roared, a sound like thunder. But Blue roared back, a challenge that said they were not prey, not enemies, but equals. The Stormwalker stopped, confused. It had never encountered beings who didn't flee. David stepped forward slowly. "We're not here to hurt you. We're here to help." Over the following weeks, David did with the Stormwalker what he'd done with Blue. Built trust, showed respect, demonstrated that not all intelligent beings were threats. The Stormwalker, who David learned was also female with young hidden in a storm formation, gradually accepted their presence. The solution required compromise. The Ven agreed to restrict their harvesting to certain areas and times, avoiding the Stormwalker's nesting grounds. In exchange, the attack stopped. The Stormwalker even began protecting Ven settlements from other dangers, seeing them as part of her territory now. When it was time to leave, the Stormwalker watched from a cliff, her young beside her. Blue and her children called out goodbye. The Stormwalker responded, a farewell between apex predators who had found understanding. On the ship heading back to Draylen space, David received a message. It was from Earth. The government wanted him to lead a new program, the Interspecies Conservation Initiative, a team dedicated to resolving conflicts between colonists and native predators across the galaxy. "You've started a movement," Rilth said. "The galaxy is learning from humanity's example." "We're not perfect," David replied. "Earth has made plenty of mistakes with our own wildlife. But you learn from them. That's what makes humans special. You refuse to accept that violence is the only answer." Back at the sanctuary, life had returned to a comfortable routine. Blue's children were now fully grown, each establishing their own territory in the shimmer wastes while remaining close to their mother. Dr. Fenn's research had confirmed 7 more shimmerlings, and hope grew that the species would survive. David sat at his usual spot by the cave entrance. now more of a house than a cave after renovations. Blue lay beside him as she often did in the evenings. Scout, despite being an adult, still sometimes climbed onto the roof above him, keeping watch. His communicator buzzed. Another request. A species called the Tor had a predator problem on their mining colony. They'd heard about the human who adopts monsters. "What do you think?" David asked Blue. "One more trip?" Blue's scales rippled with colors that he now understood perfectly. Amusement, affection, agreement. Thought so. As the double moons rose over the shimmer wastes, David thought about how far he'd come. He'd been invited to hunt a monster and ended up adopting a family. He'd exposed corruption and changed galactic policy. He'd proven that understanding was stronger than fear. And he'd learned something fundamental about humans that the galaxy was only beginning to understand. Humanity didn't conquer their predators. They befriended them. They found common ground with creatures other species feared. They built families across species lines. Some called it foolish. Others called it dangerous. But David knew the truth. It was hope. Hope that intelligence could bridge any gap. That compassion could overcome instinct. That family was bigger than biology. Blue rumbled contentedly, and her children called from their territories, a family chorus in the night. David smiled. "Yeah, I know. Time for dinner." He stood up, Blue rising with him. Together they walked into the house where Dr. Fenn had prepared a meal for all of them. Because that's what families did. They shared food, shared space, shared lives. And if the galaxy thought it was strange that a human lived with apex predators like they were pets, well, that was their problem. David had learned the secret that humanity had always known. The scariest monsters make the best friends. You just have to give them a chance.